We're back with the Play Action Podcast here to talk about week 2. And let me tell you, it was a very entertaining weekend. At least I thought. What did you think, Brock?
Yeah, it was awesome. We had mostly the main game, the Texas-Alabama game, but a lot of upsets, sprinkled in there too.
Yeah, we thought it was the main game, but it actually most of the country's eyes were on Colorado. I think that there was more views for the Colorado-Nebraska game than the Alabama-Texas game, which is surprising. I mean, but it's the prime time Deion Sanders effect, so we're going to be talking about them a lot this episode. But I think let's just kind of talk about Texas first.
Yeah,
Texas, they were impressive to be able to get a road win, first road win since Joe Burrow, I believe so.
In Alabama, yeah.
In Alabama, yeah. First loss.
21 game win streak, I want to say.
Yeah.
In Tuscaloosa.
I think it was longer. I think it was more than that because it wasn't the longest active, or was that Georgia?
Georgia's right behind them. They're at 20. I just saw that today.
Okay, so they did have the longest.
I think it was the longest.
They had the longest active 21. Home win streak in Texas. Quinn Ewers going in there and doing what he did last year, stayed healthy this game, was able to get a win on the road against Bama.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we both agreed that Texas probably should have won last year as well. So I don't think it's as surprising as maybe everyone's making it out to be. I think the thing that is surprising is how well they played. And they really went in there and dominated.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It was probably like halfway through the first quarter, maybe it was a little bit into the second quarter. When I kind of looked, I was like, Alabama's kind of getting dominated out here.
Yeah.
And I was like, the score doesn't really reflect that, but they were really getting outplayed.
Yeah.
Like pretty heavily by Texas. And I generally didn't even feel like Texas was really doing anything special either.
Yeah.
They were just playing their brand of football and it was working.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you think this is more credit to Texas or kind of just going to show that, Bama's not as good as they are every single year?
See,
as good as they used to be every single year.
See, and I tweeted this out. I don't necessarily think it's a problem of talent with Alabama because I think Jalen Milroe, I think it's there. I think you can see the talent with him. He just hasn't put it all the way together yet.
Yeah.
So he's still got some growing to do, but mostly with Alabama, they don't have an identity.
Yeah.
When you think of Alabama in the past, you think of, a dominant run game with Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, all those great backs, Josh Jacobs that came through the program.
Or a dominant quarterback,
wide receiver play, with all the great, QBs and wide receivers that have come through. But it's like they don't really run the ball too great. They don't really throw the ball too great.
Yeah.
Defense is good, not excellent. So it's just weird. It's an Alabama team that doesn't really control the line of scrimmage. They don't really have those elite, athletes at the skill positions. And they just look a little lost right now.
Yeah. And I'm kind of looking ahead in their schedule. They got South Florida next week on the road. Then they come back home and
one.
Yeah, really weird to be able to play on the road.
How did South Florida pull that one off?
Who knows? Yeah,
that is weird.
Yeah, and then they come back home, play Ole Miss, and then Mississippi State on the road, A&M on the road, and then eventually get down to Tennessee at home later in the schedule, and then LSU at home. So I mean, is this team going to be able to start to figure it out before we get into conference play, and they're gonna they pretty much have to play perfect the rest of the way out to be able to, be considered for a college football playoff spot.
Yeah, they got to win out. You can't lose 2 games and be considered to be in the playoff because there's going to be 4 teams that have better resumes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird. I even tweeted out too, is the dynasty over? And people have been saying it's been over. And I was like, has it?
Yeah. It's like, okay, you didn't win 2 national championships.
Yeah, but it's like the one that they played against Georgia, they lost in the Natty, and then last year obviously didn't make the playoff. So I wouldn't say that the dynasty been over.
No,
but I think it's definitely starting to shift a little bit.
Is it on the way out? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. As Georgia, is becoming, starting to become that dynasty. I think.
Yeah, and we've seen it with other teams too. There's been a lot of teams that have really stepped up and gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
Florida State is having a resurgence. USC is having a resurgence. Michigan is back to where they've been, or where they were long ago.
Yeah.
Ohio State's, stayed consistent as one of the best teams in the nation. So it's like when Alabama's been dominating, it's because Alabama's been just so much better than everybody else that everybody else has almost looked like bad, if that makes sense. So I don't know. It's interesting to see. I don't think Nick Saban has lost it, but it's weird to see his team not really have an identity and not really know what they are as Alabama football.
Exactly. Very uncharacteristic. But, on the flip side, we're talking about Texas. This is a team that realistically has a shot, I think, to run the table. I mean, I'm looking down at the rest of their schedule. Wyoming next week at home. I'm assuming they take care of business there with 28.5-point favorites. They play Baylor on the road, but I mean, Baylor starting off 0-2 didn't look too hot in those first 2 weeks. I think they take care of business there. Kentucky or Kansas at home, and then they play Red River rivalry. But I mean, other than Oklahoma and what I'm seeing, Kansas State, those are the only two teams I could see realistically beating this team if they stay healthy, I think.
No, yeah, and I think a lot of credit has to be given to Texas because every year it's that same conversation: is Texas back?
Are they back?
Not? So I think they really took a big step forward. Last weekend, and I've been talking about Quinn Ewers. I thought he looked a lot better than the stats showed last year, and I don't necessarily think he had a great statistical game against Alabama, but I thought he played it lights out.
Yeah,
I thought he was really, really good.
Yeah,
and that could just kind of shows what Texas has become right now, is they don't necessarily need players to put up crazy stat lines to win football games.
Yeah.
Steve Sarkisian really has that team dialed in and what they want to do. And
third assistant coach to beat Nick Saban. I know we talked about that last week. Did you find out who the third was? It's Jimbo.
Jimbo Fisher.
Fisher.
Jimbo.
So Jimbo being, I think it was 20.
He would have been the first then, wouldn't he?
I think no. Because it was that game winner, Texas A&M at home. Remember that? Was that 2 years ago? So I think his was 2 years ago. Last year being Georgia or
Kirby did it.
Kirby.
I think the Natty was the first coach to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So the Natty and then Jimbo. And now we're talking Steve Sarkisian. So third assistant coach to beat Nick Saban. And I think it was, what was the stat about them playing at home or something? There was some ridiculous stat about Alabama.
I don't know. I saw that the 10-point deficit was the biggest home loss since 2004.
Yeah, that's what it was. What it was. They just don't lose at home. I mean, this team is unbelievable at home. So, I mean, big props to Texas to go in there and, prove that they're ready to, they're ready for conference play. They're ready to compete for a college football playoff. And, it was awesome to see. So you see them as front runners for Big 12?
Yeah, I picked them to win the Big 12 start of the season. I think this kind of just solidifies that.
Yeah.
They have so many weapons. Xavier Worthy is such a player. AD Mitchell is such a big ad from Georgia. And, the running backs have even stepped up too.
Yeah.
With Bijan and Roschon Johnson leaving. But I think the most impressive thing about Texas is their control of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
They controlled the offensive line. They controlled the defensive line. They had that kid on the edge that was just causing havoc. I can't think of the name, but they really did their thing. And I think it's only Oklahoma that stands a chance, which is funny to say because it's like they're the two teams that are leaving for the SEC.
I know.
And they're going to be the two teams that dominate the final Big
12.
Big
yeah.
12.
Yeah. The original.
Imagine if they end up in the conference championship game.
Oh my gosh. That would cause some conversation for sure.
People would be very upset.
But I think we should transition, start talking about the Pac-12. Obviously, Colorado going out there, getting a big win against Nebraska at home, first home game since Dion has joined the squad and rebuilt the squad. And I mean, it was a sloppier game than I thought compared to week one against TCU. But, they were able to get it done against Nebraska.
What do you think about the storm in the field?
I like it.
Do you?
I like it. Yeah, it's a rivalry game. I know that they're bigger than that, and I know that they're definitely a better football team. Mm-hmm. But, hey, Nebraska, Colorado, that's a rivalry that dates back to 1889, I believe.
Yeah. No, yeah. And there's a lot of talk about it. I don't necessarily mind it. Like, I think people forget we're talking about a team that won one game last year.
Exactly.
And it was Cal. It was Cal at home,
Yeah.
which is not like something to write home about.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily mind it. It is weird seeing a ranked team storm the field over a non-ranked team. But like you said, it is a rivalry game. There's a lot of history there. But I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. I saw a lot of people on Twitter really getting after Colorado and clowning them. But I think that's when you know that Colorado has truly risen.
Who cares? I think it's like, who cares? These fans deserve it.
Yeah.
After what happened last year, go storm the field for beating a rival. You're already double the win total that you did last year. Go have some fun, go celebrate, and get ready for week 3, week 4, because this team is starting to develop into a really scary competitor for the Pac-12, I think.
So do they storm if they beat Colorado State then?
I doubt it.
The Rocky Mountain rivalry. I saw that today. They call it the Rocky Mountain rivalry. Or
Really?
something like that. Yeah. Rocky Mountain Showdown or something.
Yeah, I doubt that they storm, but I do think they're going to win that game.
Yeah.
No, it's a big spoiler for my pick later this week, but I do think they're going to take care of business. The real question is it going to be week 4, week 5? That's when things start to get really testy for that Colorado team. I think, is it Oregon?
At Eugene.
At Eugene. And then they come back home for USC.
Fight on.
Yeah. And interesting about this game, the game this weekend, big noon kickoff and college game day going to be there.
Yeah, I think it's even more interesting that Big Noon Kickoff had such good ratings that they're coming back again.
Yeah.
For back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
So
I think that definitely this week is a bit of a snoozer compared to, this last weekend as far as matchups across the country. I mean, obviously their game days going to Colorado State and Colorado.
Yeah.
They could have waited for USC.
See, that's another thing I want to talk about. Do you think they go back in a couple weeks when they play USC? Say Colorado, maybe beats Oregon. I feel like you almost have to. I feel like
because that's probably at that point, that's definitely going to be a top 10 matchup.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a really interesting topic. I mean, I don't understand why they wouldn't, because the viewership is probably going to be competing with maybe a Michigan-Ohio State game.
Let's throw an even crazier scenario out. Let's say that both Colorado, Oregon win this week. Do they go to Eugene? Say Colorado beats Eugene. Do they go back to Boulder?
So 3 weeks of just following Dion. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him with, how many eyes have been on this team and everything. It's been, the Dion, the primetime effect is here.
Yeah.
And it is in full effect. So, yeah, but the Pac-12, they've been incredible. 8 ranked teams in the AP top 25 this week, the most ever by a conference.
Yeah, I was going to say
by
that.
2. Yeah. I don't even think there's even been 7.
I think, I think it was the SEC with 6, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, and last week there was 6, right? There was 6 in the Pac-12? Or
6 in the Pac-12, yeah.
So they had it tied last week, beating it by 2 this week as Washington State jumps in after a big win against Wisconsin at home. And then UCLA jumps in.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 of the 12, as obviously the Pac-12 is going to be departing next year. And, big rest in peace to the conference. But, going out with a bang.
That just makes it even worse, though, in my opinion. It makes it so bad. It's like you got 8 out of the 12 teams in your conference are ranked. 8 out of 12.
And arguably the best conference as far as depth goes.
Yeah, and let's say you take out USC and UCLA because they were going to the Big Ten a long time ago. I guess maybe it's been over a year. It's been a while. So take them 2 out. You still got 6 out of the 10 teams before realignment started that are ranked.
And only 2 losses total, one being to a in-conference matchup between USC and Stanford, and then Arizona losing in overtime to Mississippi State on the road. So,
So it's like...
Yeah, this team is... this conference is killing it.
I'd say there's a lot of talent in this conference, and it really is, the gold standard of college football this year is the Pac-12, with not only just teams, but with quarterback play as well.
Yeah.
I think I saw somebody's top 10 quarterbacks in college football right now, 5 out of the 10 from the Pac-12. So it's like, it really is a shame that this conference isn't going to exist anymore, but it's going to be interesting to kind of see how the rest of the season finishes, because I think there's a real scenario where you're sitting in November and you got maybe 5, maybe 6 teams that are playing for a conference championship.
Yeah.
Because they all have maybe 1, maybe 2 losses each. So this is definitely the conference to watch. If you're East Coast, turn on that TV at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
and watch some of these games because
Exactly.
they're going to be the gold standard of college football this year.
And I'm looking down at the Pac-12, the schedule next week, and there's only 2 teams on here that might not be favorites going into the game. And that might be Arizona State against Fresno State, and then maybe Sac State above Stanford.
Yeah.
But other than that, I do not see a single Pac-12 team that realistically might lose next week.
Well, and yeah, assume the Pac-12 does their thing again and at least all the ranked teams win. You're looking at 8 teams that could potentially be in the top 20 of college football.
Yeah.
Obviously, you need some help with teams losing above them, but I think UCLA is 24 and Wazoo's 23 is the other way around.
Correct.
So, Wazoo could easily jump 4 spots. UCLA could easily jump 4 spots, and
8 of the 20.
You could have 8 of the 20 teams in the top 20 or 8
of the top 20.
8 in the top 20.
Yeah, 8 in the top 20 there.
And, you got a bunch of teams that are hanging around that top 10 too. Utah's at 12, Oregon's at 13, I believe.
Yeah.
So maybe some madness happens in the top 10 and you get those teams jumping to the top 10. You got 4 of the top 10 being from the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of buzz around that conference. Any other buzz around the country you kind of want to touch on?
I saw a crazy stat that for the first time since 2017, the top 5 have been from all 5 Power 5 conferences.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Georgia, obviously SEC, Michigan, Big 10, Florida State, ACC, Texas, Big 12, and USC, Pac-12.
Yeah. And I believe there's 4 ACC teams total, obviously a Pac-12, but Ole Miss took care of business against Tulane. I know that was one of our games of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And Miami taking care of business against Texas A&M at home. That was also one of our games of the week. Anything to take away from those 2 matchups?
Yeah, Ole Miss did their thing. They went on the road. Obviously, Tulane doesn't have their quarterback, Michael Pratt, who was out. So that played a big effect. But Tulane was actually kind of bossing that game early on.
They were.
Kept it really close, and then Ole Miss kind of opened up towards the end to get that win. But, as much as we're talking about Texas being back, what about Miami? Tyler Van Dyke.
Yeah.
He finally looked like the quarterback we expected him to be
last year. Exactly.
He really showed up, and I think he threw for 5 touchdowns, over 200, 300 yards. He looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's saying something too, because Texas A&M also looked pretty good. Yeah. In moments. So it's not like Miami beat up the Texas A&M team of last year. It looked like Texas A&M has taken some steps. Obviously, it still fell short, but Miami could be a team with Clemson. They were struggling early against who did they even play? Charleston?
Oh, yeah. So, Charleston Southern, yeah. So they ended up, controlling and taking over that game, winning big, but that doesn't tell the full story that team, that was a legitimate game there in the first half.
They dropped out, yeah. Yeah. Dropped out of the top 25, but there's a real scenario where it's Miami and Florida State battling for the ACC.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So, but there's, 2 other, Duke and North Carolina, they both look good as well, especially at the quarterback position. Yeah. But you're right. What Miami could be back. They could be competing for the ACC, as Clemson is, on their downfall, preying on their downfall.
Yeah. It's weird to think that there could potentially be 4 teams better than Clemson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's weird. That is interesting,
especially for a team that has just dominated that conference for years. Yeah. So, yeah, overall, I think it was a really good week.
Exciting
for sure. A lot of great matchups to come. Unfortunately, not this upcoming week, but I saw that week 4 and it is loaded.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So this is kind of the calm before the storm.
Yeah. Starts.
So
before we go into conferences,
yes, we got to digest 2.5 weeks of college football, take a breath, relax. And then week 4 is going to be back for some loud games. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think there's 6 ranked matchups that week.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be ready to cover on that. We'll still do some previews for this weekend later this week. Yeah. And we'll fill you on any other news. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to follow the socials at the Play Action Pod, to get all the news updates, graphics, stuff like that, yada, yada, etc. on there. And then we'll see you guys later for some previews later this week.